Hey everybody, welcome to our BillTrack50 new user webinar. And the idea for the webinar is more of a legislative tracking 101, how you track bills, why you track bills, what you can do about bills, as well as some tips and tricks for how to use BillTrack50's free service to go ahead and track some bills. So we'll try to convince you should first, and then we'll tell you how. All right, so I'm Karen. Howdy. We also have a bonus Patsy here today. Say hello, Patsy.
Hello.
So she is joining as well. She will wrangle questions, so please do feel free to ask away, chat, whatever, use the question pane, get creative, do what you will. And on we go. Oh, and Patsy, if you want to chat with Patsy at any point, patsy@legination.com. Okay, here we go, diving in. This is what we're covering today. We're going to talk about the legislative process, how that works, how to understand a bill, where you can get involved, that kind of thing. And then, as I mentioned, we'll look at how to actually use BillTrack50 to do the things that we are claiming are important, and then we'll take your questions. So you can absolutely stop us at any point. This is meant to be interactive, or you can wait and ask questions at the end, and we can work on specific queries or look for specific bills you're trying to do or whatever else you might need. And let's do the thing then. So to start right out, the legislative process, what you need to know when you're tracking legislation. All right, Patsy, would you say that there's some things to know?
Yeah, it's a bill. Oh, that takes me back. It is important to kind of understand the process to know the best engagement points so that you're not too late to the party and you can make sure that your voice gets heard.
That's my thinking exactly. Very nice. All right, so I stole this graphic from the NCSL website, National Council for State Legislatures, which I have a number of things from NCSL and some links. So we'll be mentioning them a few times. They do a great job explaining the legislative process in all the different states. But we also have some links, and I will give you that link later for what the legislative process is in each state. But in general, it starts with an idea. So if you have an idea for a law, you can reach out to your representative and see if they would be interested in drafting that into a law. That's a perfectly legitimate thing to do. But usually the legislator, or I don't know, maybe a business will have an idea, or an industry, or a lobbyist. So that all gets thrown in the hopper. And then the bills are actually drafted by professionals, which I didn't know until I started this and learned about it, that individuals are trained in writing legislation specifically. So they will draft it. The legislator might draft the idea, but it will be put into proper form and language by a professional drafter. Okay, then it gets introduced into the first chamber, whichever chamber it is that the legislator who introduced it sits in, the upper or the lower, the House or maybe the Assembly or the Senate. And then it gets usually assigned to a committee for further discussion. So that is where the work usually takes place. So that when it is in committee is a great time to attend the committee meeting. You can testify, and the guidelines for how to testify are different for each state. Some places are continuing to let you testify virtually. Some places are back in person, but generally there is a way to get on the list to share your opinion, should you have one. And if you have a personal story, or if you have professional interest or professional experience to share, it's a good idea to do that. They do want to hear from you. So it's a representative democracy. They're trying to represent everybody's experiences. So they can't do that unless they know them. You can also, of course, call your legislator and tell them what you think. So then the committee will have a vote. And if it is successful, then it will go out for the whole chamber to vote on. Otherwise, they might suggest amendments, and then the amended bill will go out for the whole chamber to vote on. So then at that point, the chamber, let's say we're in the House, has to go approve it by a majority. And if that happens, then it gets sent over to the other chamber to consider, and the same stuff goes on. So you've got representatives in both chambers. So which representative to reach out to at which time, it matters which chamber your bill is in. And it matters if the legislator is on the committee that is hearing the bill, then you can contact them about how you want them to vote in committee. Otherwise, you need to wait and just let them know how you would like them to vote on the entire floor. So it does matter a little bit who your legislator is, and understanding where the bill is in the process for what the current steps are that you should be taking. If it gets through the second chamber without changes, then it gets sent off to the executive, often the governor, sometimes the president of the United States, depending which legislature we're talking about. If it's a resolution, it might just go to the Secretary of State and not to the governor. Resolutions don't have the effect of law. It's just a statement of opinion. Things like making it National Ice Cream Day or being sad that somebody died. If it gets changed, of course, it's got to go back to the first chamber to get approved, and off you go. Then it would go to the executive. Okay, any major things in that process that I missed, Patsy, that you would think are important?
No, I think it's good to distinguish where your legislator has their engagement points, because as their constituent, they're going to be keen to listen to you. So getting them at the right time is always great. Also, definitely check what the story is, whether you can still do remote. Some states are still doing it, and it's really convenient, and they have links where you can just say yay or nay and submit a little, paragraph, and so just being aware of your options for engagement, and also also seasonally, sometimes, your representative or your senator might be back in your district or in your area, and keeping an eye out for, just being able to engage with them in community events too. I have a question about the process that may happen in between first and second chambers and how long it usually takes.
Great question. Depends on your state. So the actual sending of the first from the first chamber to the second chamber is just a matter of them signing a piece of paper, and then it's essentially done, and it's in the second chamber. Now, how long it takes the second chamber to pick it up and send it to a committee, that can vary, but usually it's actually not too long. Sometimes it takes a very long time, or it never gets picked up in the first chamber. So some states require all bills get sent to committee. Some states require all bills actually be heard in committee. A lot of states don't. And so some bills just never get sent to committee, which means they're never going to pass. But once it's gotten through the first chamber, usually the second chamber will be respectful enough. I'm speaking of states, not of Congress. The second chamber will be respectful enough to pick it up at least and talk about it. Not so true in Congress. Right now, when they're under one party, then that happens. In other circumstances, it can often happen that it never gets picked up. So we can, it's true when the committee hearings, when the committees get together, can be quite often for some committees, but some committees have a different schedule. So we'll show you how to figure all of that out as we go through this presentation. Okay, so just to recap, you can participate by having an idea, watching a hearing, showing up at a hearing, testifying at a hearing, calling your legislator, letting them know how you want them to vote at a hearing, telling them how you want to vote, how you want them to vote on the floor, and then the same thing for your other representative in the other house. Okay, so, and then finally, the governor, your last chance, you can urge the governor to sign or not sign a bill. Okay, so then down here, we've got the link to where this graphic is, which has a ton more information. You can see they call it learning the game. So you can go there to learn more from NCSL. I've got this link to Ballotpedia for who represents you. So you can figure out who your legislators are in each chamber, and that's based on your address. And then this Getting Heard guide by our friends Up to Us, they wrote this wonderful thing about how to reach out, what to say, and also encouraging you to do so, because all of us together are pretty smart. So if we all participated, I think we get going in a great direction. Okay, so that is the process. Other things to know that aren't necessarily the process, but are still key items. Most states do not meet all year round. Most states meet from January-ish through May or June-ish, but every state has its own schedule. And some states only meet for 30 days, 60 days, and some states do meet for the whole year. So, and Congress, of course, is a year-round situation. Some states have 2-year sessions. Some states have 1-year sessions. The states on the map that are gray there have every other year sessions. So again, all the states are unique. So you can click on this NCSL calendar link to show you when your state starts and stops, and if they're in a special session or what exactly is going on. This link will take you to the Legiscan schedule, which gives you similar information. And then this link takes you to the multi-state schedule, which has some additional information about carryover and if it's a 2-year state and that kind of thing. So there's lots to know, but there's no, if you have an idea for a law, great, reach out to your legislator anytime. But if you're concerned about a bill, there's really no point in bothering to call after the session is over. So it's important to check, you know, when your state is meeting to know what kinds of activities that you can do. You will get mailed this slide presentation and these links after the webinar is done. So this is coming at you. All right, so that is that. Another thing to know is how bill numbers work. So I put a made up bill number, but there's going to be a lot of HB 101s. So you'll often see a bill number in that format. So this is how it works. The letters, the HB, tells you what chamber the bill is, and also whether it's a bill or a resolution. So if it's an H, it's in the House. If it's an S, it's in the Senate. Certain states, their lower chambers are called the Assembly. So California, New York, some other places, it's the Assembly. So that'll be an A. That is the lower chamber. And all the states have a Senate. So they're all S for the Senate. Then it might have a B, it might not. But if it's a resolution, it'll almost always have an R. So there'll be HR 101 if it is a resolution instead of a bill. And again, bills change a law. Create a new law. Resolutions don't have the effect of law, but might be doing something you care about anyway. Then there are joint resolutions. So those can be HJ or SJ, which means the House came up with it, but both chambers agree that they want to make this statement. And those will be resolutions generally. Now, Congress does it slightly differently. They call their bills HR, and their resolutions are HRES. So just one little wrinkle there. Okay, so that's the letters. Anything that I forgot, Patsy? Before we move to the numbers?
Nope.
Okay, and then the numbers are usually chronological. So you can tell the bills that were introduced earlier in the session have lower numbers, and the bills that are introduced later in the session have later numbers. That only matters a little bit in that the first handful of bills introduced are usually a statement of priorities. So mostly if you see it's HB1 or HB4, it's probably something that they thought was important. Doesn't change anything, still has to go through the exact same process, but it just lets you know that this is one that somebody was pretty serious about. They also sometimes have some fun numbers. There was a marijuana bill in California that was 420. So kudos to them on that. HR 40, I think, in Congress was the reparations one, referring to the 40 acres and a mule from after the Civil War. So they sometimes do something cute with the number, not usually. Usually they're just in order. That's the numbers. So if you would like to know even more, then there is information down here about how bill numbers work and how some of those other things work. So that lets you know where the bill was introduced. So that tells you what the first chamber is. So if it's an H or an A, the first chamber is the House or the Assembly. If it's an S, then the first chamber is the Senate. So in that graphic where I said first chamber, second chamber, that tells you where it's at. So if it's in the H or the A, you need to call your representative. If it's in the S, you need to call your senator. And then after it crosses over, that means it's in the other one. Flip those. So if a Senate bill has crossed over, now it's time to reach out to a representative. Okay, so that tells you where it started and where it is, and who you should call, which person you should call, if that makes sense. Okay, so that is how the bill numbers work. So taking all of that knowledge about when the states start and stop and how the bill numbers work and a little bit about the process, let's now dive into BillTrack50 and put that knowledge to work. All right, in we go. So this is how you write a query for bills, a couple of tips for you. So of course you can just type in a word, just like Google, boom, you'll get some results. We have other features that are very Google-like. So if you would like to keep a phrase together, for example, minimum wage, you can put quotes around it, and then you will only get bills that say minimum wage exactly, not minimum someplace and wage someplace. If you want to have a wild card, so if you want pharmacy stuff, you could do pharma and then a star to get pharmacological, pharmacist, pharma, whatever. So you can have anything after that. So that's good for, say, vaccine. If you don't know if it's going to be vaccine or vaccinated or vaccinating or vaccination, you can use the wild card to say any ending on this word. So that just means any letters after this. And then you don't put commas or anything in, you just type in words with spaces in between them. So I'll pull it up to show you an example here in a second. When you're putting in words, you have two kinds of searches. You've got all of searches. So all of the words have to be in there, or any of searches, any of the words have to be in there. So if you're looking for marijuana, you might put in marijuana or cannabis or CBD if you care about all of those things, and then make that an any of search because any one of them is good enough. But if you're looking for marijuana and reparations, then you would put it in an all of search because you want both of those words. And I'll show you where you choose that. And then there's one more choice, which is the near search, which is an all of search, but the words actually have to be about in the same sentence. So if you don't have an exact phrase, you can actually do it a little looser and just say, I don't know if it's going to be exactly this, but these words need to be together-ish in any order, maybe a couple words in between them. Okay, then if you've got a paid account, then you can do something even more complicated. But let's just stick with the free account for now and go in and do a demo. I believe I am logged in. Is this me? This is me. Great. Okay, so we've got the bill search. So, hey, Patsy, what's something that's been on your mind? Or I'll take something from the viewers as well, if you want to throw a topic at me. Give me an idea.
I'm waiting to see if...
give me an idea. They can pipe in when they feel like it.
What has been on my mind? The healthcare cost. Ooh, compensation for the exonerated. Ooh.
Okay, so I'm going to start by just saying I wanted to have the word exonerated. Great word, by the way. I love that. Okay, so then you've got, it turns out, 134 bills across the country, and I can narrow that down by state, or I can leave it for the whole country. Now, I'm going to say, I also want to say compensation, but I'm not sure if it's going to be compensation or compensate or compensated. So this is a great time to use that star. And so I'm saying I want some form of that word in my bill plus the word exonerated. And I could even say, I don't know if it's going to be, it's probably going to be exonerated. So I'm not going to put a star on that. So if I say what bills have both those words, you see I have a smaller count now, 46, but still a number of them. Factual innocence, some stuff about wrongful conviction compensation. Oh, that's interesting. So maybe we want to also search for wrongful conviction. So we could put that in. and say, well, that's fine, but what if we do And that's the whole idea, is once you get started, you might see some terms that you want to add to your search. And then you can do a wider search and get even more bills that have those things in them. So that's pretty helpful. All right, so as we go through, I can look at this. Now I can do a couple different things with this grid down here. Actually, I can do a lot of really useful things with this grid down here. So I can click on a column to sort by that and see what the most recent action is. So these actions in the future, these are committee hearings that are scheduled in a couple of weeks. These are committee hearings coming right up. And these are things that happened recently. So you can see who's working on this topic right now and has been doing things. And you can see what they did. So this came back from a committee that said pass. So we're waiting for it to get taken up by the other chamber. And we see this was in the House or in the Assembly. So they've sent it off now to the Senate. And then you can see this hearing is coming up, as I mentioned. Okay, so that is one thing you can do, is you can sort. You can also hover over the name of the column and it'll give you this little filter symbol. So if I click that, I can say, okay, I want to know crossed over bills so that I can get a feel for how many are actually close to getting through, right? So these are ones that have made it to the second chamber. There's 18 out of my 171 are sitting waiting for things to happen. Okay, this one, enacting clause stricken, well, that one is actually not going to move. Let's see, this one, they sent it off to a committee. This one this hearing got canceled, refer to assignments and so forth, so we can see where they're at. So this is a great way to kind of hone in on what you want. You can also filter by state. Or if you want, you can group. So there's a little area up here that says drag here to set row group. So I can also pick up one of these labels and drop it into the grouping area. And now I can see how many bills there are in each state. So I can see California is working on this quite a lot. Other states, some states have quite a few bills. Oh, New York has a lot of bills. And then some states, just have one or two things they're doing. And then we list Congress, these are federal bills, as US. So then I can open those up. I can also double group. So I could say, you know what, group by that progress first. So I can see introduced and dead and signed. I can open up signed and see where they've gotten signed. And then I can open up a specific state to see what those were, okay? So you can really explore the data quite well just in your results grid. Yeah, and then you can keep changing your query to add new words and add new ideas as you look at the bills and start getting a feel for how they're talking about these things. All right, so a couple other things you can see in here. If I click on a column or I click on a row, it'll make it big enough for me to read, say, the entire summary. I can also make things bigger. I can drag things around. So I can adjust this as needed. And so I can check some stuff out, but maybe just the summary isn't enough. So let's look at bail bonds. So I'm going to click on this bill. And now I can go read the bill. So I can see where it's at. So finished up in this committee, crossed over in March. And we can look at the action tab to see exactly what's happened. It was a Senate bill to start with. So we see that it started in the Senate. They read it, went to committee. They said, sure. And then the whole Senate said, sure. And then off it went to the House on 3/9, 3/10. The House had its first reading on 3/10. So they did look at it right away. But it took a while before they sent it off to insurance. And then insurance took its sweet time scheduling and time to talk about it. And it came out. Now they have to schedule the floor vote. So that's where that bill is at and how it fits into the process that we talked about. For votes, we can see how these bills went down. And we see that it was just unanimous, and we can see the House committee was also unanimous. If it's not, you can click on it to get a picture of the yeses color-coded by party and the noes color-coded by party. Might give you some insight about the situation. You can also see who the sponsors of the bills are. So if your representative is one of the sponsors, then your voice counts even more. And also you can see who is on the committee that the bill was sent to. As we mentioned, that matters. So I see that, I mean, it's out of the House committee now, but while it was still sitting in the House Insurance Committee, then I could look up who's in that by going to committees and typing in insurance. And this is an Oklahoma bill. And then I can see the House Committee on Insurance, see who those people are. If one of you, that happens to be one of your representatives, great. If it's not, and you still have questions, there's staff for you to reach out to ask about what you need to do or what the process is or what the rules are for testifying or whatever. There's also a link here where you can go and see this committee on the state website so that you can see their schedule, when they meet, what all they're going to consider, when your particular bill is going to be heard, and that kind of thing. So there's a bunch of information there about the committees too, because that is an important piece to this puzzle. So that is another kind of search you can do for free. So this is available to you to look up. Okay, so back to the bill. So the sponsors. So then that's the last piece. You might want to click on a sponsor and see information about them, how to reach out to them, who their staff is, to talk to them about the bill and their intention. You can ask them if they think it's going to pass. You can ask them what they're hoping to accomplish. You can tell them your story and get them to change it, whatever. So that tells you who wrote it and who you might reach out to. An important point there is the asterisk means that they were an author. If they don't have an asterisk on their name, it means they were just a co-sponsor. So they were willing to support it, but they didn't write it. So that's just a little detail there. Okay, now in the bill text, this is the actual what the bill is doing. So this is the law. It's going to change section 1320 of OS whatever. So I can Google this to read the current law if I want to read it as it is. But the current law is also stated here. This light blue color means this is the law, how it exists today. The crossouts are what they're suggesting changing. So they're changing it from the court clerk in the county into the court clerk in any county, which does seem like a change. They're taking this out and they're saying they're going to do this and so forth. So the underline is what they're adding. And again, they're removing the and making it any, which is quite a big change with just one word. Okay, and then they're adding in a fee and so forth. So here they're just adding a sentence to the end. That's it. So that's what they're changing. So you can decide if this bill actually is going to matter to you. So that's how you read one of these bad boys. Sometimes they're pretty opaque. Sometimes they make perfect sense. If it is not clear, again, you can reach out to the legislator who wrote it and talk to their staff and ask them to clarify. They need to do that because it's important that everybody understands what the bills are. So that's what they're for. Okay. So anything I missed, Patsy, and then we'll see if there's any questions.
Nope, I think you did great. I'm a big fan around the engagement piece of tying in the legislative profiles and sort of understanding that piece of it. In particular, pairing the actions, right, of the committees to the committees that those people might be on. Also, obviously, you have to sort of weigh the political context for the probability of the bill, which will be nice to review on our state stats, how you can see the context of the state and, you know, perhaps how often, you know, the success in a particular party might come along for a particular bill.
Spoiler alert, this is later in the presentation, but let's just click on it right now. There's the state stats over here, because Patsy makes an excellent point that I tried to ignore, but then I couldn't. So this is our little map for, here's the states. Let's see, we're in Oklahoma, which is here in the middle of the country somewhere. All right, so this tells me when Oklahoma session runs, and that it's a biennial, which means that the 2021 session is going to go for 2 years. It says that it's got a crossover deadline, which means that bills that have not crossed over by 3/24 are dead. So we won't mark them dead, but you just know that as a fact because that was the deadline. If they didn't make it to the other side, they can't move anymore. We've got the breakdown of the House and the breakdown of the Senate. So you can see that it's pretty Republican. Don't know if you knew that about Oklahoma. You can see where the bills are in progress. So you can see bills, there's only a few that have been introduced that haven't moved yet. And obviously if they haven't moved, they haven't crossed over. So those bills aren't going anywhere. Most of them are sitting in a committee somewhere. And again, if they're sitting in committee and they didn't make it across to the other chamber, then they're not going to pass. These are crossed over, so these are still viable, and these have already passed. So that's where we're at. You can see that Republicans sponsor most of the bill, but Democrats did get some over, and there are a few bipartisan bills out there. Mostly they've got bills, a few resolutions, and then you can see how many bills pass each year or get introduced each year and how many actually pass each year, to give you some general feeling that 4,000 bills get passed, 700 or 4,000 bills get introduced, 700 get passed. So that just gives you just some feeling. And you can see that, in fact, this is an unusual year. 5,000 bills got introduced, and we're only at 600 passed right now. So yeah, last year, this year is different than it has been. You can see the trend in the legislature year to year. You can see how many Democrat sponsored bills passed, how many bipartisan bills passed, and how many Republican bills passed each year. So this is percentages in absolute numbers. So 1% blue bills, 24% of the bills passed were bipartisan, and 75% were Republican. And then these links are pretty helpful. So you can get more information about the committees. You can get more information about the legislative process. So this is a link to the state website to explain exactly how Oklahoma does stuff. The Ballotpedia link to that state, which has tons of extra information. And the Find Your Legislator link to remind you to look up your own person. All right, tons and tons of context here for you for each and every state. So if you're only interested in one state because you just live in one state, great. Get to know your state, and then you can look at bills. If for some reason you're tasked with looking across several states, this will help you kind of understand, because different states look different. So if we look at New Mexico, you get a different picture, of course, but you also get like fewer bills introduced, a higher proportion pass, and then in some states, they really only introduce bills if they mean to pass them. So they only introduce 400 bills and they pass 200 of them. So that helps you know that like a bill introduced in Wyoming has got a good chance of becoming a law. Whereas a bill introduced in New York, 20,000 bills were introduced, 1,000 passed. So good to know, right? Okay, so that is tips on how to write a query, tips on how to use the grid, and a preview of the state stats. Okay, hopefully that was helpful. Any questions from our esteemed attendees? Anything you've been trying to figure out how to do on BillTrack50 that I can explore? Okay, feel free to formulate that in your head and ask at the end too. Okay, some tips for using the grid. Just reminders so that you have this. You're gonna click on the bill number to read a bill. I showed you that. It does only show the first 1,000 results. If you get a paid account, it's the first 5,000 results. But you can always chop it up by state to narrow it down to look at your results that way. So you still can get everything. Again, so you filter by state for big queries to get it so that you can see all the bills. You can sort, you can filter, you can reorder the columns, you can group. Notice that you can also search for legislators and committees. And then also we have an app. So if you want, you can do it all on your phone. So the app is fun as well. Okay, so using the data, I clicked on, I feel like I'm going off the bottom. I don't know why. Anyway, the summary tab, I don't think I pointed out, it's got a link at the bottom to go to that bill on the state website. That's where we get the data. So we share that with you. The bill text tab has the current version, but also older versions of the bill. And the vote tab gives you details about how everybody voted. And then on the legislator tab, it's got links to all kinds of stuff and their staff. And remember, you can always look up your own legislator here. So just quick on legislators. I'm gonna pick. So this is a paid account. You get to save a search and then you can review it anytime and you can set it up to email you. But I'm just gonna pick some legislator here. All right, so our legislator will have these social media links so you can look at them on Twitter or on LinkedIn, Facebook. Maybe we've got YouTube for them, like whatever we know, you can email them. But we've also got links to their Ballotpedia, which is their election results. So you can see like how are they in a safe seat or what, and then follow the money to get their campaign finance info. So there's actually a ton of stuff here along with their votes and their staff and such. So not to be ignored. And then if we look at a bill, we've got down here the link to the state website. So this will take you to the actual Illinois legislature where you can see all the same information, but continue your research if you want to, if you need to, and see a bunch of extra information. Okay, I think that's what I wanted to show there. Onward. And then don't forget the state stats. And this will link you to the state stats, but again, it's just in that navigation bar. As soon as you register for your free account, you've got access to all of that state information at a high level. We hope that that's useful and helps you have some context for what you're looking at in your state. Okay, real quick about the paid service, because of course we got to make a quick little plug. Lets you save queries and set up alerts so that you'll get an email. It lets you set up multiple users so that you can collaborate with your friends or other people. And also, you get more data and more search options so that you can do write a more detailed search. You can search by things introduced to a certain committee or all kinds of stuff. And then you've got lots of ways to share the information. So you can make widgets to put on your website. You can make scorecards to share with people how legislators voted compared to how you wanted them to, and so forth. And so we've got tons of examples of how customers have used our widgets and maps and scorecards here. And then we have the pretty scorecard with the gallery of faces example here. So you can check that out if you're interested in kind of the high-powered tools. One thing to share. I mentioned you could get alerts. And so I've just got an email here. This is my email from today. So if you set up some different searches, we'll just let you know what's going on. So in this search, I've got a bunch of results. This bill actually had an action. In my minimum wage search, you know, these bills had different things happen. This is a new one. Maybe I want to go read it and so forth. So I just get an email, one email in the morning, letting me know what happened for the bills that I'm caring about. So that's how alerts work. Okay, any questions on the professional tools? I don't really want to belabor it any further than that, unless you have a specific thing you're trying to accomplish. Okay, moving on. It's a great service. If you need it, please do reach out. Okay. So that is the end of our planned presentation. Happy to take any questions. You can also reach out to us. Again, I'm Karen. Patsy is Patsy. And you can click here to schedule a time to chat about anything you need anytime. You also have links to connect to us just in your account or in the Contact Us page. So there's lots of ways to email us, to schedule a meeting with us, keep up with us with our newsletter, what have you. All right. Any questions? Or Patsy, any comments while we're letting people think about their questions?
Our 30-day free trial of the paid tools is really kind of a fantastic way to kick it around. And honestly, hopefully by now you've noticed that Karen and I are super friendly. And if you kick it around for 30 days and you're like, hey, I don't need it, no sweat, but you'll have maybe gained some information or some insights that help you further along. And that will also help you realize that we'll always be here to try to help you move your cause or issue forward. So check it out if it even seems slightly of interest. It's really a good way to let the system help you out, because we're all busy, and but yet you care enough that you made it to this webinar, so the automation can be a great time saver.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions? All right, well, we're right at time, so we will go ahead and wrap up. So thank you for coming. Hopefully this was useful and you learned a little bit of something and that the BillTrack50 tips were helpful. And yeah, reach out anytime. We're always going to be happy to help.